Hey everyone, hi, welcome to the first Wildermyth Community Town Hall. We've just launched 1.0. It's doing really well. The critical reception is incredible. We're really humbled and happy about that. So we wanted to just take some time to talk about what's going on with the studio, with Wildermyth, with our plans going forward, and then also to answer a bunch of questions. So we've got a bunch of good questions lined up. Before we get to that, let me just kind of introduce who we've got here. My name is Nate. I'm the co-owner of World Walker Games and the lead programmer for Wildermyth, and I've been working on it for like 8 years. It started out as a side project, and we were able to take it full time, and it's me.
I'm Annie, I guess also co-owner, and I do the art for Wildermyth, and I've also been working on it about as long as this guy has. You've been working on it a little longer than me, but you went full-time earlier than I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a long journey and a lot of fun. And let's kick it over to Patrick.
I'm Patrick. Hi, everyone. I am another programmer on the team. I've been working on it for 3 years at this point, somewhere around there. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Doug?
Hey, I'm Doug. I have been working on it. I guess like I started working on it back in the beginning a little bit and was kind of in and out. And then really well, I don't know, there were a few different like development phases that I was involved in, and then really started writing heavily, I don't know, maybe about about 4 years ago, took a break, then came back and did a bunch more and started working on the campaigns and everything. So, yeah.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Jackson. I've been working on the game for 4-ish years now. I started out just kind of playing the game alone and giving responses, and then I came on as QA. And then I started helping with like design stuff, and eventually I started doing level design for some of the like customized maps. Yeah.
Cool, yeah, and we have a few other team members who couldn't be here right now, but that's the team. We're very small. We're mostly remote. Got Connecticut and Texas and California and all that. So yeah,
So we launched Wildermyth.
we did.
Yeah.
It's going really well. We're definitely planning to move forward with our plans to continue supporting the game. We'll be adding content. We'll be looking into DLC and all that stuff, which actually kind of gets into some of the questions. So is there anything else to go over before we start the questions?
Just a giant thank you to everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys so much, especially folks on our Discord and people who've been playing in early access and before that on itch. We just absolutely couldn't have done it without you, without your feedback and support and encouragement, and it's been really amazing. So thank you so much for being with us on the journey. Patrick, do you want to kick off the questions?
I would love to. Yeah, so these are all questions from the Discord, and also just touching on some of the FAQ things, because like sometimes people ask those too. So first, the one that was asked by a number of people and is also in the FAQ. Are there any plans for new campaigns and monsters?
Yes, kind of. We have one campaign that is actually written and is in the process of being polished up, and that'll be coming out when it's ready. But it is largely written, and the fights still need to be made and all that sort of thing. And then in terms of new monsters,
It is a possibility.
probably.
You have told me not to promise anything.
Yeah.
Specifically.
So without promising anything,
Yeah.
a new monster group is something that we talk about a lot. It's one of the most fun things that we could do, and so we think it's pretty likely. Even if we don't do a full monster group, we'll definitely be adding. Probably I'd be adding like one-off monsters here and there for whatever kind of content we do produce.
All right. So again, another question from the FAQ. Are there plans to add new races and classes?
Mostly we think this is best supported as mods. for a bunch of reasons. One is like the most interesting things about the stock fantasy races is the differences between them and the sort of different cultures that they bring to the table. And the way that the game is set up right now, it would be really difficult to bring that kind of interest to the table without rewriting all of our events and like sort of rebuilding it from the ground up around that sort of thing. If you just want to play as a dwarf or an elf, then mods are the best way to accomplish that, and we plan to support modders who want to create those things. For classes, it's a little bit more complicated. The short answer is we want to support a broad array of fantasy archetypes, and we're absolutely willing to work with modders who want to add more specific archetypes, but we're looking at it. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has a comment.
Like, one of the things is definitely that Annie has to do a lot of art.
It would be another
That's one
way.
thing.
It's a lot of art. It's also
That's doable.
yeah, it's also a lot of writing as far as like we have a lot of splits that split the text based on like the which class they are or things like that. So it would need to be sort of
Even like roles.
back
and-
populated.
It would,
like back
it would be
populated.
hard to make it sufficiently like represented into the rest of the game.
But I will say that like
Yeah.
hearing all this feedback is extremely useful for
Mhm.
us when we're thinking about our next game. When we're thinking about, future projects, like this is great to know.
Again, from the FAQ, will Wildermyth be ported to consoles?
The answer for this has changed. Yes, probably. We are actively looking into it. We have several this. It will take a long time. That's because the game is written in Java, which is my mistake. And it'll be difficult, but we expect it could be about a year or so before. Oh boy, sorry. Anyway, yeah, we're working on it. Next question.
Let's see. I'm going to. So we are also getting some questions here and there on the Twitch page that Bailey is relaying to us. Thank you, Bailey. Which I think I'll just throw in when they're small and when I think they are valuable. The first of which is, where can you buy these T-shirts that we're wearing?
Mostly if you see us at a convention, which we haven't been going to due to the pandemic, but we'll probably start up again, probably for PAX South, and then we need to get that merch store up.
Yes.
So in the future. And let's see, I'm just going to keep going down the list here. So this is a question from Tam Troll. On our Discord, what is something that you wanted to include in the game but never got around to or otherwise couldn't add?
So for me, right off the bat, I wanted water in the game. Just in any map, in any form, there's water on the maps. I wanted rain, I wanted puddles, I wanted rivers going through combat maps, and they told me no.
So when we were very first designing, I remember the environments, we were like, oh, and swamp will have water. Absolutely. Because how hard could it be? And turns out that it was hard to make it look good and behave, and it would just like, it would look real janky. I would rather not have it than have it be janky.
We didn't want bad looking water, and it was hard to come up with a way to do good looking water. And at this point, yeah, it's a shame. That's me being like learning how to be a graphics programmer and not really being up to it yet. But hopefully for game 2, water is one of the things I want to tackle for game 2.
Water.
The thing I always wanted to get in was more like body types for heroes, like bigger heroes, smaller heroes, tall heroes, short heroes, chubby heroes, buff heroes. But the way we built our rig is very. It's just a bunch of image layers. It's thousands and thousands of image layers stacked on top of each other, and unfortunately, it would be a year plus long project of me not doing anything else to add more rigs, and it still breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say like the number one thing that I wish could have been in the game is just like more stories, more events, more more random events, more of everything really. And it just became, I mean, we just had to get the game out and
Small team, we're more.
There's not a lot of us.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that
I think we'll get to some of that.
It's high quality.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be there's definitely going to be more events coming. That's something that's definitely, I think within the next 6 months, we'll have more stuff coming in. Hopefully, I mean, as much as possible, as much as we can get. But
Yeah. Oh, real quick, legacy monsters.
Legacy monsters.
We wanted legacy monsters.
That'd be cool.
Monsters that you would see again and again that might like level up with your. Sorry, I'm gonna just make everybody mad. Why don't you have this? That sounds cool.
Yeah,
we talked about it for years, but again,
we couldn't make it fit with everything.
There were just
else.
other things we kept having to put in, and we couldn't make it fit. But again, other games, we'll keep it in mind. We've got this big, beautiful toolbox of stuff to draw from.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
Moving on to another question from Tamtroll. What is something you never thought would initially be in the game, but ended up in there anyway?
Most of it.
Oh my God, do you remember it was 2015 when I left Game Salad? And we're like, okay, well, we'll release this. We're getting personal here. We're gonna release this thing in the next 6 months, and then we'll have our second kid. 2 kids later, the game finally launches. So anyway, we thought it was going to launch early 2016 at the latest, the absolute latest, and then it went on for another 5 years. So,
thought it was a much smaller game than it was.
A much smaller
so like specifically like comics.
Yeah, we didn't think comics were going to be
children and families, ability upgrades, villains.
That's true. Villains didn't go in until after
all the stuff.
I think we did a poll right after
Alpha.
Alpha. That was like, hey, what would you guys like to see? And they were like
Villains
stories, and that won by quite a bit.
Villains is definitely one of the biggest things that really made the game feel like it was coming together to me. Because before Villains, they were all kind of like the generic campaigns, although the generic campaigns actually have more flow now than they used to too. But just having those stories to tie all of the events together into one cohesive meshing story really, really felt good to me, and I'm happy we added that in.
Yeah, that was a huge change that I it was 2019, I think, that Ulstrix was written, and really just kind of changed what the game could be, kind of, or as far as like how deep it could go and how deeply you could describe a character or live out a character's life. Really just changed with Villains, and that added to the scope of which a lot of things that we did added to the scope, and we didn't do that much cutting of that, so that I think it just grew into what it could be. And I think that's one of the cool things about it, is that like a lot of the possibilities that came up, we just said yes to, and it let the game grow, but it also just made the whole development cycle take so long, and I'm sure it was pretty arduous, but yeah, it was cool seeing all of those things sort of grow up into what the game became. Yeah.
Plus I feel like that gave us time to polish it. Had we not put in Villains or in the children and the comics, I feel like we wouldn't have had all that extra time to polish
combat
clarity, the overland, the interface, just all that stuff that turned out to be really important.
Yeah.
A question, oh gosh, I'm not going to get this right. A question from Anka Dotir Lapter on our Discord. If you are planning to expand expand the game, are you planning to use an expansion, a bigger chunk, or DLC smaller model? So basically, how are we planning on expanding upon the game after 1.0?
I think we're not sure. I think we're going to look at chunks that feel good. Like one example is a new monster group and a campaign to go with it. Like that would be a chunk that feels good on its own, and we'll try to find a price that feels fair for that. If we were to do a big feature overhaul or like a new biome or something, that we would just price them individually. We don't have a lot of experience with this sort of stuff yet.
A question from Kalisa on our Discord. How have sales been pre and post 1.0? Are we seeing a lot of new players now that it's out, or did everyone get in before it hit 1.0?
Sales are real good. We are seeing a ton of new players since 1.0. In early access, we were doing okay. We were not sure if we were going to be able to keep going long term. And now that we've hit 1.0, we are confident that the studio has a future. So we're really happy.
From Rad Cool Dude on Discord, are there any plans to incorporate player-created content into the game proper, like a player content pack of the best events, etc.?
Not as such. And that's we love our modders so much, and we want to support them so much, but especially with stories, it's tricky if they don't exactly hit like the tone and the feel that we're aiming for in the core game. It would feel strange to include them. And then there's also like questions of compensation and other weirdness. Are we taking advantage of these people? And that would make us uncomfortable as well. But we feel good about, highlighting mods on social media and promoting them in other ways.
Right. Yeah. Our modding community is wonderful. There are a lot of people making stories and changes to the gameplay and a bunch of cosmetic things, and it's all fantastic. Thank you so much to all of you. We love you.
On Discord, all the new hairstyles and the little elf ears,
so
and the cool outfits.
Yeah,
I love
cool.
it. I love it so much.
Yeah.
We are happy that our game is living in the hearts of so many.
Yeah, make it your own.
From It's Ya Boy Rowan on Discord, what surprised you the most in terms of development and player base and stuff?
We spent years working on combat clarity. That surprised me. I thought
about that one. So I love combat clarity, and I was still consistently surprised by how hard it was to make people understand interfusion. We reworked the feedback for interfusion at least like 7 times, and each time I was like, all right, this is too much, right? And it wasn't too much. There needed to be more.
I would have been off in the Photoshop mines for a long time, and then I would come back and actually play the game. I'd be like, how do you do this? Patrick's like, the giant glowing blinking thing over here that I put. I'm like, oh, I didn't see it. Yeah, it turns out that I don't know, man, maybe there's like a science to it. You could probably write a book, Patrick, or like do a series on like, it turns out these kinds of things work better than these to like draw people's attention to places or whatever.
Yeah.
So also thank you, early access streamers, because that is a lot of how I was able to figure out what things were working and what things weren't. So
that was so bad.
Every time I would watch early access streamers, and I would watch that first battle where you use interfusion for the first time, and it would be incredibly helpful at seeing whether or not they were understanding it, whether or not we were like making it clear enough. And it wasn't for a long time. I think we just added some changes that like right before 1.0 that I think made the clarity a lot better. And I'm seeing most people get it the first time now.
Finally,
so it feels good now.
Yeah. It was a powerful weapon in our discussions where I disagree with Patrick and say, they don't know, everyone's going to understand that. And then he'd say, well, I saw some streamers and they didn't seem to get it. And I'd go, all right, fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
when you have video evidence.
Mm.
It's so valuable
Yeah.
though. Because that's not even, if you ask people for their feedback, they won't remember. People don't remember like why something didn't show up.
Or even worse, they'll think that it's their fault.
I know,
Yeah,
and it's,
which is sad.
yeah,
But yeah, being able to watch streamers was
and watch
incredibly
where people
helpful.
pause
Yeah.
and what they think they should have done instead.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's been really, really, I don't know. We've been really lucky to be able to have that kind of, kind of window into how people play.
And kind of like branching off of that, the passion of our community and how excited people are about the game and everything, like that was all very surprising. Like not good surprising. Like we just didn't want to hope. Like it's not like we think our game is pretty good, so we were hoping for it. But
Yeah, after playing it so long, sometimes I take it for granted. I'm like, yeah, it's Wildermyth, whatever. And then people who play it for the first time are like, this is a cool experience. I'm like, all right, I guess. Like, you say so.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something? Okay. From Story Writer on Discord, do the devs have a favorite campaign story or mode of play?
Walking Lunch, Kavan. All-time favorite.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Just show off. Why don't you?
Well, I better be able to play the difficulty. If I can't, then I'm not really good at my job.
That's fair. It's your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like definitely the stories that I enjoyed writing most were enjoyed. Ones that were the most rewarding, I think, were Aluna and the Moth and Bones of Summer, just because like they were the most in depth and they were the most like really like they're just really drilled down to like what a character could be, like a generated character, like how much and how deeply you could evolve that character over the course of a campaign. I thought that was a very interesting exercise. And then also just like I discovered characters in those campaigns that were just really fun to write. And that was really helpful to just have like solid characters, the NPC characters, especially like the Mothman and like Pjark and Devane and Versal.
I've been calling her Pyark for years now. Oh no.
You should talk about the canonical ending for Devane.
Oh, Devane, yeah. He
Wait,
ends up.
dude.
Wait.
Spoilers. Careful here.
Okay.
Probably have players here who haven't played all the Bones of Summer yet.
Well,
All right.
Maybe we'll put it in the spoilers
just
channel
picture
later, maybe.
a beach and a Hawaiian shirt and an umbrella
Yeah.
and a fancy drink. That's where Devane ends up canonically.
Yeah.
That's a
All right,
Katie's
that's fine.
idea. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
No, I love all of it.
I am an adventure player myself, unashamed.
Oh yeah.
Other people talk about Walking Lunch. No.
Oh yeah. I can't even play the game.
You're good. You're really good.
Just because it is so much of my own writing and it's hard to just look at it all the time. And it like just makes me crazy to look at it. But sorry, go on.
All of us love looking at his writing, to clarify.
No, Aluna and the Moth was such a joy to play. And I remember I think it was when you finally sent over the ending. I don't know which ending it was, but it was like the first final ending, and I forget. Nate had like some music going in the background, and I'm clicking through this, and I'm just like, oh my god, I love this! I love this so much. It made me very happy, and I know Ulstrix was our first attempt at it, but yeah, no, the first time you sent over the ending for Ulstrix, just those last few panels. No spoilers or whatever, but it was. Yeah, all of a sudden there's this realization of like, oh, the game can be this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Whoa, all right.
Getting a glimpse of the emotions that it could do.
Yeah, and the story arc and the wrapping things up. And it was, that was a very powerful moment reading that Ulstrix ending for the last time. It was also pouring down rain. So it was really cool. Yeah. That's my story.
Yeah, I typically play on Tragic Hero. I think I'm either that or Walking Lunch at this point. Never carved in stone. I am not an Iron Man person. If I lose, I am trying that battle again.
Yeah. Well, we
But
have
I do.
different reasons too.
Yeah, I mean, we're testing a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
I think campaign wise, I have liked each campaign more than the last. It's kind of a toss up between the last two. I would say they both really hit my heartstrings a lot. But
I like them.
okay,
All of them.
moving on. So a question from Civ Lover on Discord. I've noticed the game's setting seems to avoid politics and has no higher authority running things. Is that a space you'd be interested in exploring in the future, or is it out of the scope of Wildermyth, of what Wildermyth is aiming to do?
Doug?
Yeah, I think. Oh, what did we say about
What
this?
did you recommend?
You wrote
think,
some
like-
notes beforehand.
Yeah. I think it's not out of the scope exactly. I think like there could exist that like dimension to the world as far as like, oh, in this version of the Yondering, we have like these cities and we have this like maybe this king and this other lord over here and they're warring, they're having this war and blah blah blah. Like that could be a story that could happen in Wildermyth, absolutely. I mean, it's people. I think we don't have a lot of metropolitan centers like in the base, like just regular world on purpose, because that makes each hero like feel like each hero is responsible for so much. And I think like what makes that feasible is that there's no like lord saying like, well, go do this, you heroes, and then come back to me and like I'm the important one, report to me and like finish out these quests, like that that's like you lose the agency of the heroes there, and you lose like the personal importance of their quest. And I think like we always strove to be very character driven rather than like plot driven or anything like that. We wanted the action and like sort of the like impetus for every plot and every story to be like driven out of the characters themselves rather than like from some other external thing. So that's why we don't really focus on that kind of stuff. I think like politically you get things with the Deepists, you get things with the Draven that touch on that, and there could absolutely be a story that brings that, or like has a human empire, human nation in some stretch or region that is involved in the story. It's probably not something, I'll say it's probably not something we will write for this game.
Yeah, I feel about the same way in that like we want the heroes to be the ones making the main decisions. We don't want there to be an army that can come and rescue them.
Yeah.
And in order for there not to be an army, you kind of have to get rid of all of the rest of the government structure, because and that leaves the heroes as the main decision makers and the main active forces in the world, and that's kind of where we want them.
From the Zombie Penguin on Discord, what's your favorite bug that popped up, or your best development story?
So there was one early in my time for Wildermyth where I just pulled the latest and I opened it up and all of my legacy was absolutely naked. Nothing on them whatsoever. And I just kind of looked over at Nate and he was like, oh, that's a problem. Okay.
Yeah. It was surprisingly persistent too. It would keep coming back in different
There
forms.
would be some weird little edge case.
One little corner case where
Boink, yeah.
Yep.
I think my favorite bug, I guess, is when you get one of the fallback like hook quests to pop, and it's like, going on a quest, huh? Let's do it. And it's like, this really old, dumb, silly fallback event.
Placeholder.
Yeah, those placeholders. And they come
Yeah.
up with money.
Yeah, I think we just fixed, or it might not even be out yet, but
Oh yeah.
there is one where it's
Yeah.
where you're recruiting a hero and it's like, this is a placeholder. It's like, no, we don't want that in there.
I think one of the best
Yeah.
parts of getting to do QA for this game is being the one to answer the emails asking about, like, is this a typo? Like, did you mean to say pork rust instead of pork roast? And I have to check with Doug every time because I've responded and be like, no, that's definitely a typo. And I go to Doug and he's like, nope, that's absolutely what I meant to write. I'm like, all right, that one's on me.
Yeah. I write weird
Rust.
things.
You can imagine it though. It's like kind of overcooked bacon.
Yeah.
There's always a good reason for it. I just don't immediately notice it.
Sorry.
I will say early on in the comics too, before we had good positioning tools and ways to de-equip heroes
Oh,
to easily
yeah.
put their weapons on their back, sometimes we would forget. And so we would be having just a normal conversation and I would have my spear right in your face and you would have your axe right in my face and we would just be talking like none of this was happening. And I don't know whether it was supposed to be passive aggressive or what, but
Yeah.
I think most of those are fixed. There might be some old ones
Come a
where they
long
still
way. Yeah.
put their sticks in each other's faces.
I think we used to have it like on the lover panel too, like it announced the relationship, like these two are lovers, and they're just like standing there with that was good.
Yeah.
From Hero of the Wind on Discord, mystics and the unique form of magic and interfusion has been one of my favorite aspects of this game so far. What kind of thought processes inspired it, / what sort of development did it have behind the scenes?
We went back and forth on this a lot. I think we always wanted a magic system that was a little bit unique, that wasn't just slinging fireballs, and we didn't want mystics competing with hunters in terms of ranged nuke. So we were definitely on the lookout for something different and unique. And when we got to actually designing the combat, the thing that we started to realize was that where you are standing on the board has to be really important in order for the combat to feel fresh time after time after time after time. We have these procedurally generated maps. We sprinkle randomly placed scenery. And if you could just deal ranged damage at will, it wouldn't matter, right? Like the randomly placed scenery would have no effect on how you make decisions. So by forcing you to interact with it, suddenly where you're standing, where the enemy is standing, and what random scenery happened to spawn in completely changes the way that you have to approach that fight. That was a huge win when we discovered that, and when we were able to like make it click. From there, it was like
Do you even remember that process?
a little.
I feel like mystics were going to be, I feel like they were kind of going to be fire-based for
Yeah,
a while.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a point
Well, then
where
it
they
might have been
just had Splinter Blast and
Fire leash.
Fire Leash,
Long
and
time, yeah.
yeah, and then I think I actually got to make some of the abilities, and it's become this kind of like interesting sub strategy of there's some scenery that only appears with monster groups, and there will be mystic abilities that'll show up more often. Like for shards, they only show up very often when you have like Drowvin, because all the Drowvin scenery has shards attached to it.
Mhm.
And so like, sometimes it makes more sense to pick different mystic upgrades based on the enemy you're fighting, which I thought was really fun.
I think I drew a lot of the scenery before we added a lot
It's
of those
true,
abilities
yeah.
too.
Before we
So
had
there's
split
some
them up into
weird, there's some
categories,
weird
yeah.
ones where it's like, well, there's a rock with the tree growing out of it. So yeah.
From Lamura on Discord, what has brought you the most joy about the game and or its release?
The name generator.
Mhm.
The name generator was one of the first things we did, and it was all Doug. Maybe it was some Nate. I don't know. It was
in there.
It definitely started with Nate, and Nate was really the one who like had the idea, and then I just filled in data for it.
But then you did all of the
It's lovely though. Yeah.
yeah. First the names. So suddenly, yeah, you see a little guy, and his name is like, I don't know, Benny Bluff-Tooth or whatever it is, and you're like, oh, Benny Bluff-Tooth. All right,
Yeah.
I know what he's all about.
Yeah.
And it
It just
yeah.
keeps giving.
And then
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, what if we do it for places?
Yeah.
And then suddenly we're in the swamp of Muddy Mud, and you're like, oh, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
And then it came into like weapons, and I have, Golem Smasher, and like, yeah, all right, Benny Bluftooth is taking Golem Smasher to the Muddy Mud Swamp, and like the story just fills in itself. And I still, in our Slack channel, I'll still pop up just goofy name generator things that come up, because even after 7 years or whatever, it still puts out these surprising little, these little gems.
The other day on the stream, I saw Timbers, and I was like, all right.
Timber.
All right.
Yeah.
We're simple folk out here. We don't.
Timber bark. Timber bark woods. Yeah, this is a forest, no doubt about it. Who named this? Yeah.
It's like those neighborhood names or street names you see sometimes if you're just driving around. I really love seeing people's favorite hero submissions.
Oh yeah.
I just think it's so cool what people do and the stories that they put on their heroes. And I like that a lot.
I think for me, probably the mix of every time Annie would like drop a bunch of new monsters, I would like run to our little like combat lab so I could just create them and see what they looked like. That was so cool for me. I was like, oh, that's so terrifying, or oh, that's so cool.
Oh, he added like the last kind of TV monsters.
Yeah. That was really fun. And then I because I play it so much, a lot of times I don't listen to the music while I'm playing, but then every now and then I'll like turn it back on to check for a bug, and it just fits with whatever comic I'm reading, and it kind of meshes together so perfectly. So shout out to Candy, our composer. She does incredible stuff.
Yeah. I should have had her on actually, but
I'd also say, like Candy and Elise both. I think like the audio, like the sounds of the game are so like I don't know. Last time I played, were just like so immersive, and so like I don't know. It's very rewarding when you like take a break from just like creating and working on it and just play it and get immersed in it and really like feel how the audio just brings the world to life. It's very exciting and very rewarding.
Yeah, we've got this. I feel like our team has this really cool dynamic where say, Candy will make a concept piece, especially early on, and then Doug would write a blurb about a place that, the music evoked. And I would read that and I would kind of draw what I thought that would look like. Here's a monster that would live there. And then pass that over to like Jackson and Patrick and say, what does this monster do? Like, he's got friggin' saws on his shoulders and stuff. Okay, well, let's do this. He can do this kind of attack and this kind of attack. And then Doug will grab that and say, okay, well, what kind of story? How can I pop him into a story? He's like a chapter 4, blah, blah, blah. And then, who does this? And then I'll draw the place that it is. And then Candy has to write the boss music for that. And it's this back and forth of, I think a lot of us all just kind of delighting each other with, with suddenly the different abilities and the stories and the music and the whatever that all keep kind of coming in. And I think we feed off of each other that way. And that's been an absolute joy to do.
For me, definitely one of my favorite things has been watching streamers, which I already sort of mentioned. But
that blows my mind.
Prior to 1.0, I am pretty sure I had watched all streams of Wildermyth, including ones that people posted on YouTube.
Wow.
After 1.0, that is not happening anymore.
No.
Whoa.
But there were few enough, and I was invested enough in, so not fully, but like I would like at least click on all of them and like kind of
doing that for fun.
for fun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, this is. I love watching people play Wildermyth.
I feel like you had to.
No.
See, I love streamers, and it's awesome that people like playing our game and showing it off. I have such a hard time watching because I'm terrified that they're going to run into some game-breaking bug that I didn't catch.
We watch
and
it,
then,
though.
Yeah, but it's too scary, Patrick.
It is scary. Oh my gosh! Anytime.
We wrote a joke and they don't think it's funny. Oh god! I can't.
Every time people get the wolf head for the first time and they laugh, it makes me smile. It gives me joy in my heart because it just like genuine joy. And yeah, streamers, thank you because you're awesome. Let's see. I am going to skip this one because it's specifically about art style and Annie just left. So this is a question that was asked by Miyokari on our Discord. Will you be selling the game soundtrack on Steam?
Yes, we have. That is in progress. We're in the Candia Composer is getting the soundtrack together, getting it fully recorded, and we'll be selling it eventually when that process is all done.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, live recorded to clarify.
Yeah.
So like right now it's just samples and things still. So it's very exciting to see what it's going to be like when it's all live recorded. From Kadai on our Discord, I'd be curious to know about the artistic influences in terms of the game's art styles.
Oh yeah. So because there is a lot of art, and I want it to work quickly, it's a lot of it kind of just sort of defaults back to the style that I normally draw in, but I definitely wanted to push in certain directions. And one of those directions was Cartoon Saloon, which is like Secret of Kells, Song of the Sea. I love their textures and their like natural geometry that they put into everything, and the way they make big shapes out of natural forms. I've always really, really loved that and tried to strive for it. Some of the stuff from Wind Waker we really liked. I think one of our Smoke Pie Critic articles might just be straight up ripped from it, but yeah, the way again they use these a lot of spirals and hand drawn kind of figures to not go overly complicated, to keep it kind of line art looking, but make the whole thing work really harmoniously as a whole. Has been something we work on as well a lot. What was the last one I wrote down? Oh yeah, Samurai Jack. I haven't watched a whole bunch of it, but their backgrounds are gorgeous, and they use these really cool paint textures. It's almost that like old school Disney, that like Mary Blair style of lots of textured things with like bright big lines coming out of it and interesting silhouettes. And yeah, really kind of limited color palettes, very, very deliberate color palettes. Yeah. And I think we've been working on that a lot too. And it's been really cool. I'm going to digress for a little bit here. I have all my assets that I make, but one of the coolest things has been watching, say, Doug take those and turn them into comics. So I'm the artist for the game, but I don't put together the comics that don't have my name on them. So that's whoever's writing the comic pulls from these giant banks of art and puts them together and tints them and resizes them and adds atmospheric fog and figures out where all the layout is going to happen. And so that's been a really cool. We've developed that a lot.
It's come a long way.
Yeah, as far as atmospheric colors, like making the color palettes more harmonious, making the layouts interesting, and yeah, that's been really cool to watch. Yeah. So I think that probably answers the question, hopefully.
Let's see. I'm wondering if I should switch over to the ones posted in chat.
Sure, let's do that.
Are adding in more classes via new skills a more viable option than straight up new classes?
Yes, and some mods have already experimented with that, and that's one of the sort of short paths that we have to enabling class mods is basically to do just that and to let modders.
We got ones that are doing it already?
We have had some experiments, I think, like some Smokers or Davies. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't played them, but people have been working on it, and I think that's kind of the approach we'll take for class support. Yeah.
How has success changed your look at future development for Wildermyth? I think we probably already entered some of this.
Means we can keep doing it. We're not going to hugely grow the studio right now, but we're definitely, we're here. It looks like we can keep doing this for a while, and we plan to do just that.
Ooh, here's a good one for Doug. On the writing side, was it difficult to write the stories while having to leave so much up to insert here modifiers versus being able to write more detailed and specific stories?
Your modifiers versus being able to write more detailed and specific stories. Was it difficult? It was pretty difficult. It was like, I was also like, back in the day when we first started writing events that were just going to be kind of like FDL like, where it was like, here is a paragraph and like here is a couple choices. Then I was like, well, what if we have personalities? What if we have randomly generated personalities that like change how or what line someone says, right? And like change, you know, this and this. And so like it grew up from that, and like, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm getting off track. The point is that, yeah, it's difficult. It's something where like you keep interlacing the same ideas with that trait. So like if you just look at the personalities, you have to like think about a line one way, right? And then decide like who doesn't say this line. Like if it's like, all right, guys, we're all going to do this together, then it's like the loner is not going to talk that way. The coward is going to be more unsure. Like the greedy person is going to like maybe have a different take on it, right? The goofball is going to be more jocular about it. So there's always things that you have to check on yourself and like check that you're not oversimplifying and like making characters speak out of character for them. So yeah, it's difficult. It's rewarding. It's a lot slower. You just can't cover as much ground because every step you take has to be like kind of populated. Yeah. But it's an interesting journey. It's challenging, but it's fun and it's cool, and it's enabled by so much work by Nate and Patrick, and just the tools that we have are so developed and so well developed for the task that it makes it a lot easier, I think, on me specifically.
It's definitely a long time getting there. They started off pretty raw, and there's still a big learning curve on them, but I think, yeah, now it's to the point where for experts, they're, moderately productive.
I mean, a lot of it is just like, I ask for something. So it's like it's kind of built for me, which is unfortunate for everyone else. But Yeah,
just kind of to build off that briefly, like I have not seen even close to all of the content that Doug has written, because I go through a campaign and I see one version of an event, but there are 10 other versions for each personality type, and there are specific versions if you have a certain transformation, and there are specific versions if you have a family relationship, or if you're a lover or a rival, or like there are so many different combinations. And like that is definitely one of my favorite things about the game. And it can be very difficult to get right because it's just so much that you have to be accounting for all the time. But like my favorite things are seeing an event and then the person's like, oh, something is your bark worse than your bite because the person has a wolf head or whatever. Like just all that type of stuff really brings me joy. Yeah.
It was interesting doing campaigns too, because I think when we first started campaigns, we're like, okay, we're going to be writing these stories. And we figured out this really tricky part where the stories cannot be about the hero's arc, because you don't know who's going to die in the next battle. You can't have a chosen one. You can't have the leader who has to take them to the end. If you do, it's got to be an NPC, which NPCs are incredibly fun to write. And we've got some really good ones, I think. But
it's a brutal constraint.
To not know who's going to be there, were they there. I think, Doug, you ended up having to start writing a lot of splits near the end of the stories where, had this person been there from the beginning? Were they there for those first battles or when this big plot happened? Or are these just a bunch of newbies that you recruited,
Yeah, like are these the original siblings from Ectis, or or did they die? Like, have they seen the Mothman? Have they not? Like,
Yeah.
all those things. I think trying for that complexity is what makes writing campaigns so hard. Like, as far as like trying for continuity for a character from beginning to end, is really what makes that such an arduous process. But I think it's worthwhile. I think it really, like, I think it started mostly with the Deepest campaign, Monarchs campaign, where you have that one hero that starts as a like cultist recruit, and like that was my first experiment with like making a character that could that was so involved in the story that could go on but could also die. And just got more complex from there.
Oh man, having to write for all the victories, having to write that one fallback for if everybody died except one hero. You always have to write the single hero fallback.
Every time.
Or it's, well, my friends are dead. This sucks. That's got to be a split here if there's only one hero in the party.
Yeah.
You got to do that.
Yeah.
Because when that does happen to somebody, suddenly seeing the character react to the situation in a normal way is,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people wouldn't expect that from a game necessarily. And so, yeah.
I'm glad that we do it.
Yeah, I'm glad that we do it.
There are a lot of other sort of weird, hard things with that too. Like we have a bunch of different events for if a hero died in a battle, but a lot of the times you'll be doing an event, like your arrive event has a specific victory event, so that victory event takes precedence over the death event, and then players come away from it and they're like, well, why didn't, like, that's a little weird that they didn't really address the death when we have comics for it, but it's just we didn't show them. And like there are other things we could do about that. We could like adding things after chapters that mention it or stuff like that. Like that's always stuff that I've wanted to do, and just, but there's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff.
Is there a sub button, Patreon, or somewhere we can support?
Oh, there isn't right now. We'll think about it. Thanks. We do want a merch store. At the very least, we're absolutely going to have a merch store. I don't know if we'll do
we
the
in
other
fact
stuff.
have all of this merch in our closet right now. We just need to figure out
We'll get
the
that.
logistics of. We want to make
It
sure we
won't
have the
be-
logistics out before we turn the store
Yeah, it won't
on.
be for another month.
Yeah.
Another question for Doug. Your prose is often a delight to read, very poetic. What influences do you borrow from? It's very reminiscent of old Germanic and Celtic verse, especially the heavy usage of kennings, but I'm curious if there's a more modern works or authors you would cite as inspirations.
Yeah, you're absolutely right with like the Germanic and like Old English, especially like just Anglo-Saxon poetry with the like repeated use of the I'm blanking on the word, repeated syllables, repeated consonants. I'm blanking on that word. Anyway, with like Seamus Heaney's translation of Beowulf, also just like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, things like that. Like the old Anglo-Saxon poetry was definitely a huge influence on me. Just I just enjoy the like sonic effects that it creates when you say it out loud. I think aside from that, like a more modern inspirations. I think like Miyazaki, just like the Miyazaki films were a big influence on my writing, and then also like speaking more specifically to authors, like Jean Giono is this French writer. Joy of Man's Desiring is this book by him that is just beautiful. That's got this really good translation. I think it should be available still. But and then Rick Bass is a great short story writer that really got me like into writing more contemporary fiction. As far as fantasy authors, like I love Patrick Rothfuss, Naomi Novik. I think those are my favorites. I love Joe Abercrombie is good. Yeah. I think that probably about covers it. I'm like, I have a billion influences, but yeah.
I want to add.
Oh, like W.B. Yeats, the poetry of W.B. Yeats is a big one too. Especially with Luna and the Moth. That was really the big inspiration behind Luna and the Moth, was just Yeats and like loving Yeats and yeah, and then
That's awesome.
yeah. Okay, sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say definitely add Miyazaki as an artistic
Yeah.
influence as well. I totally forgot about that one, but especially like Spirited Away,
Spirited
Princess
Away,
Mononoke,
Mononoke, yeah.
need some Totoro in there.
A little bit.
We've watched a lot of Totoro
Yeah.
with the kids. So.
Yeah.
Just to check in quick, it's been almost an hour. Was there a specific time we wanted to end this?
I think, I don't know. Let's go a few more minutes and then stop out at the hour or just after.
Sure. Let's see. Wondering if I should pick and choose now. How did this team come together at the first days of Wildermyth?
It started as a side project. So we were both working professionally in game dev at the time. We wanted to do a game jam. So like the three of us came together, Doug and I, and we did a little
Isaac
game.
was there too.
Isaac was there too. Yeah,
Isaac was there. I think Katie might have even been there, right?
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
We did a game jam on like a kind of a different game, and
We're all
then
family.
yeah. In case the
Well,
names
they
didn't
are.
get away, but we did a game jam on a different game, and then we just started talking about the game we really wanted to make, which was like, oh well, it's sort of like XCOM, but it's in a fantasy setting.
We had played a lot of XCOM. Yeah.
Played a lot of XCOM. We had played a lot of a board game called Descendants Journeys in the Dark. We played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons growing up, and just
And we noticed that what we were doing every time was like we would start playing, but then we would have to fill in all the juicy details about our heroes, like
yeah,
what they were talking about, like what their childhood had been, what weird hangups they had, like who had a crush on who, and like and yeah, fill in those stories. And that was kind of we had played the games so much, I think that we knew the actual games by heart, and so the fun became kind of like, oh,
Telling these stories about the
yeah,
heroes,
what's
yeah.
gonna happen this time?
Yeah.
Who's gonna save who at the last minute? Who's gonna drop the ball when they were supposed to deal the killing blow? And
So
Yeah.
and that really became the core idea that I think we stayed true to the whole time. Next, see if we can get through a few more of these.
Yeah. Are there any plans for more generation interactions between characters, such as grandparents to grandchildren, or even further descendants? That's a question from Abernath.
That would be cool. I think we might do a little bit of it. The game really just isn't set up for family trees. We get to the family tree question a lot. Maybe we could hack something in, but it's just not set up that way because like there's no one timeline and there's a lot of difficulty to it. So we might try to do something with grandparents. That seems like it might just be doable with our current tech, but that would probably be more of something we would tackle in another game to get family trees right.
In terms of updates, what is the main focus of the future? For example, storylines, campaigns, armor, and weapons. That's a question from Parley99.
More events. We've got, like I said, we've got one more campaign. Absolutely, like balancing and keeping the overall, balance and bugs. Yeah, and then just content, I think, which includes weapons and so forth, sort of as they show up in events. If we were to do, we might maybe do more armors, maybe a third tier of armors or some things like that. And I think we'll just see where it takes us. We're gonna be thinking about this a lot more. So I think we'll develop more answers and then announce them.
Let's see, should I keep going, like one or two more, or
Like this.
have you thought of a possible PvP type mode for those that enjoy player versus player stuff.
This is something I desperately want, and there's a very good chance it won't happen, and it's honestly a little masochistic because I know balancing it would be a massive pain and I would be responsible for a good portion of it. But I always love that in XCOM, and I think it could fit in our game in a very cool way, but that's me.
It's not impossible. I don't think it'll ever be the main draw of Wildermyth, but one thing I've always kind of wanted was an asymmetrical PvP, where one player would be the monsters and the other players would be the heroes.
Yeah,
I think that might be fun.
that'd be awesome.
You could both be monsters, and it could be like, all right, Gorgons versus Morthagi,
Okay,
the ultimate.
we'll see.
Turn-
No,
No promises.
Just to clarify this,
Hmm.
Nate
You can play
added
as the spirit.
multiplayer on April Fool's Day.
Yes.
He was just like, I've always wanted to add a real big feature on April Fool's Day, and I was like, all right, good
Oh
luck.
yeah. Oh, there was a surprise. That was a big surprise with that multiplayer.
We had no idea how many people
Yeah.
were going to be interested in multiplayer. We were really surprised by it. We thought it was going to be just like this thing we
It
would
went in
throw
pretty
off.
close to the end.
Yeah.
You had built in
Yeah.
like expectations for it from the very, very beginning, but
The code was there,
the
but
code was there, yeah. But then we didn't.
yeah, it really surprised us, the reception of multiplayer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that said, we're also finding a lot of things that we're like, oh, we've got to.
It's not as good as the rest of the game yet. And
Yep.
we've got to make it better. Yep.
Yeah. How much feedback comes through the F11 menus or versus other methods? Do you find some methods better than others?
Dear God.
Aw.
No, since 1.0, we get so much feedback through F11, and so much of it is insanely helpful because, like, you know, I'm the only QA person that really goes for it. So having people help me out by emailing stuff in, it makes my job infinitely easier. I am so grateful to every person who presses that button, and even more to the people who are very clear about what went wrong.
Yeah, we get a lot.
Yeah, and we also get them on. We get reports on Discord and both Buggy Bugs and the help
Steam
channel,
forums and
Steam forums. Yep, we check all of that. At this point, we check it a little more briefly now than we used to because we have so much coming in all the time.
can't keep
But-
up with Discord anymore.
Yeah, I
realize that.
we do look through all of it to the best of our ability. I imagine you can't speak to this really, but in broad strokes, are you thinking Game 2 is similar to Wildermyth or something completely different?
Oh, we just don't.
We don't know exactly yet. I think whatever we do, it will probably have some procedural narrative. Might not look exactly like it does in Wildermyth, but it seems to be something that people want more of from us. Yeah, we'll see. We have a few ideas, but we don't have anything we're ready to announce on that. I think it would be fun to try something different, but we shall see.
Should I keep going?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe like
I don't
two
know.
more
Let's just
something.
finish
Yeah,
up
let's
the
finish
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, let's see.
We just
Any
have a-
thoughts on things like deities, religion, demon kings, gods, etc. in the game, possibly as overarching plots or related? That's a question from Armed Dreams.
Sounds like it.
Those are cool.
It does
Yeah.
sound like a duck question.
There's definitely thoughts on it, I would say. There's thoughts.
We have some of that stuff. Like we have the deepists. We have,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, we have deepists when it comes to like religious. It's like a cult. I think like they're like it sounds like an enemy group to me. Like a different enemy group would be like something that would involve like a deity or a demon god or something.
it would be fun.
it's definitely like something that we could explore, or we could go a different direction. But there's definitely room for it. There's room for it in Wildermyth. I think there's like room for almost anything, really. Like if you want to explore that, and yeah, totally.
Slaps roof of Wildermyth.
We made
Did a lot of things in this baby.
Has there been anything added by a mod so far that you wish you thought of first or didn't expect so soon? That's a question from Janja5.
Hats? No, I don't know. I like that.
It's a really cool thing where they I think they like broke out all the pieces of the faces so that you could mix it
Oh,
up.
yeah,
Eyes, noses,
that's
and
cool.
mouths. I don't think I would have done it because to get all the wrinkles correctly and the beards right would be an absolute nightmare. But I love that they did it. And now I'm looking at these going, oh, because all of a sudden there's new faces to look at, and that's very exciting.
That's
I was
cool.
delighted when I saw that one.
I was surprised how quickly someone worked on a harder difficulty mod. like we got walking lunch, and then they're like, but what if it was harder? And I was like, okay. But also just all of the mods are really cool. There's a lot of really interesting things that completely change how the gameplay works, and it's very neat. I have not personally tried most of them, but like I know a lot of our players do, and a lot of our players really like the changes and the way it like either adds depth or to certain parts or whatever.
That's super cool.
Do any of you play board games like Gloomhaven or Pandemic Legacy or D&D/TTRPG?
Yeah.
I think every person in here plays D&D at least semi-regularly.
Yeah. I already mentioned Descent Journeys in the Dark, but like other ones are Betrayal at House on the Hill is actually that's really
That's a great
awesome
one.
procedural storytelling.
The big one for me was like Hero Quest. Hero Quest is one that like I don't know holds a special place in my heart for some reason. But yeah, like D&D, like Nate got me started on D&D when I was like 6 or 7. Like I was really young.
Brought me into my first D&D campaign as an adult or whatever.
Mhm.
We've done a few since then. I don't think we have an active one going right now. But.
Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Mm.
Let's see. I feel like as long as we're pretty much we're through a good amount of questions. I think one thing that maybe is good to touch on as long as we're here and we have an audience is the thoughts on the legacy system and what it means in terms of like what is heroes coming back into new games and like what is the idea behind that?
We like talked about what we wanted our legacy to be for a long time. We knew we wanted heroes to come back.
Yeah,
but
so
we weren't sure how that was going to happen.
So I think like legacy to me has always been less so about like turning back time and more so about like a parallel narrative. So like the idea of people since the beginning of time, like telling stories about heroes that like, oh yeah, and like this one time, like Johnny Appleseed totally did this, or like, Paul Bunyan did this or that, like, and these stories that can conflict and both be true at the same time, I think was always just like a fascinating space and something that like really was like part of the germ of like what Wildermyth became, I think, and that like it was always about like kind of the like layers beneath stories and like the layers of stories that like can.
Who is the one true Baba Yaga, right? Like you can't
Yeah.
answer that question. She shows up in every story and she's a little bit different in each one. And like, taking that idea and like bringing it into.
Yeah, and letting you like develop those tall tales of your own heroes that like, and this one time they thwarted the deepest invasion. Oh, but this other time, like, yeah, did you know that they had a kid? Yeah, they had a kid, and their kid, well, like, and like, just all these things that like could be true, maybe aren't true, maybe are, maybe all are true, maybe none are true. Like, think that's one of the fascinating things about oral storytelling, especially, and like storytelling traditions, is that like they evolve depending on like where they occur and like the cultures that like are bringing them to life. And I think that was something we really wanted to capture, was just the whole nature of storytelling and the nature of like, and how that's such a shifting, evolving thing that's like, it's so fluid who someone was or is, but they can be all of those things, and like the idea of them incorporates all of them.
Yeah.
And, like, incorporates that whole thing is who they are and who that hero is. That's, I think, to me, what legacy is ultimately is about, like encapsulating that thing.
Okay, we should wrap it up. Bailey mentioned we missed the translation fact. We will be translating the game. We are trying to identify exactly how that's going to happen, but we are going to be adding additional languages. And I'm not ready to announce which languages yet, but we're working on it. Was there anything else? Any final stuff? Thank you guys so much for being here and for supporting us and being with us on the journey. It's a dream come true, literally, for me, I know, to be able to like work on something that's this awesome and have people play it. It's just fabulous. Any other last words, anybody? I don't know.
I think so. Same sort of thing. This has been an amazing experience. One heck of a ride.
Yeah, and we want to do right by you guys, so we'll be in touch, and we'll keep working on this stuff, and we'll let you know when we have more to announce. The next patch probably won't be for a couple weeks because we're going on vacation, but there's more coming.
Yeah, thanks a lot,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, Rob.